What is up, everybody? Welcome back to GBBLive, presented by Bluff City Media's Grizzly Bear Blues podcast network. This is the first GBBLive under the Bluff City Media umbrella, and we are super excited to be here and deliver all the best Grizzlies content. And you can become a Bluff City Media insider at bluffcitymedia.co/join, where you could get all exclusive access to merch, our Discord chat, live events, auctions, and so much more, as well as our premium content covering the Memphis Grizzlies and the Memphis Tigers. So yes, Grizzly Bear Blues Podcast Network still has the same feed where you can find GBBLive, Starting 5, Core 4, Next Gen, and Grizzly Bear Bets. And just subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you're following Grizzly Bear Blues on Twitter at SBN Grizzlies. I'm your host, Parker Fleming. And joined with me today is the host of Grind City Media's Fastbreak Breakfast and Grits and Grinds. You probably know him on Twitter as Fastbreak Breakfast. It is Keith Parish. Keith.
Hey, Parker.
How's it going?
Good, man. Good. It is, I mean, for me personally, fine. For the Grizzlies, we're kind of going through it feels like right now.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was trying to enjoy my vacation over the weekend, and then I'm out of the bar, and I look on the TV, and I can see the Grizzlies Nuggets game, and they show a highlight thing for Brandon Clarke, and I'm like, oh, did Brandon Clarke do something cool? Nope. Towards Achilles, and then get on Twitter, see Dillon Brooks got another technical foul. I'm like, oh, cool, suspension. And then I woke up and saw the Ja Morant Instagram live where he was flashing a Glock, and that started a bunch of craze, especially given everything going on with him over the past month, year, however you want to spin it. But, I'm not going to get into the Ja Morant stuff. Joe Mullinax for Bluff City Media put together some really good pieces about it. Starting 5, Core 4, they talked about the Ja Morant news as well on their shows. I want to focus more on the Brandon Clarke stuff because, I wrote about it on Bluff City Media, how I want to get your opinion on this. I think the Brandon Clarke thing is going to be a little bit underrated, and I feel like his presence has been a little bit underrated this year, Keith, because everyone's enamored by Santi Aldama emerging as an NBA player. And then Xavier Tillman, having good outings against Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis. And everyone's just talked about Brandon Clarke's expendability, Brandon Clarke's playoff role, with Xavier Tillman playing good in situational minutes. Do you feel like Brandon Clarke's kind of went under the radar this year in a way?
I don't know. I guess. I mean, I thought it was a huge loss. I thought it makes the Grizzlies definitely worse. I think it lowers their ceiling as a team. I think it makes it less likely they advance, in a playoff series. I think it's a really big deal for the Grizzlies. I think Brandon Clarke is clearly a better player than Xavier Tillman, than Santi Aldama. And I think the fit between him and Jaren has always been perfect. And they're guys who elevate each other, and his defense on the perimeter and the way he can fill that vertical spacing lob threat that the Grizzlies are basically lacking in other places. Mm-hmm. The fact that he's one of the only good rebounders on the team, the fact that he's a shot blocker, guys who get steals, and we just keep losing these pieces, based on last year's offseason. So I think it's a huge deal. I mean, as far as are other people underrating it, I don't know. I guess I haven't come across other people who are like, oh, it's no big deal. Certainly Xavier Tillman has been playing very, very well as a starter, but I'm still if you listen to Grits and Grinds, I'm still give me Brandon Clarke. That's what I've always been. I mean, you had Xavier doing that awesome run where he's up against Jokic and Embiid in consecutive games and holding his own. But for me, it's kind of proving the unknown, where it's well, yeah, he did fine, but what if we played Brandon Clarke in those same lineups? They destroy everyone when Brandon Clarke and Jaren Jackson Jr. play with the starters. So yeah, Xavier Tillman's doing fine, but he has his own set of limitations. He's not a very good defensive rebounder. And I don't think he has the same pop that the Grizzlies need. And, hopefully he can step up and keep playing this well. And maybe there won't be a letdown. And maybe Santi Aldama will continue playing well. We're so excited about Santi Aldama. I feel based off of how underwhelming his rookie year was, Santi Aldama's good. but we're still, I feel like as fans, sometimes we obviously overrate our guys, and it's like, but like Santi Aldama's not better than, you know, various other 7th and 8th, 9th men on other NBA teams. And like, I don't think he's better than Brandon Clarke, really. Maybe he's a little more positionally versatile, but I do. Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm really upset, you know, for this happening to Brandon. I'm like super relieved. He actually signed an extension, so it's not going to affect his bank balance and, you know, his ability to sign a contract in the offseason. So like, I'm glad he got all that money wrapped up, but I think it's a big deal for the Grizzlies this year. I think it's a big deal for the Grizzlies going forward. They are now shorthanded in the front court kind of permanently.
Yeah, I totally get that. You know, I agree on the contract front. I'm glad he got that extension. You know, I never wanted to talk about the money thing on my piece yesterday on bluffcitymedia.com just because, you know, a guy tears his Achilles in the middle of his prime. Has a big impact on this team. I'm like, man, I'm not going to pile on him and be like, oh yeah, that's a negative contract now. But, you know, I will say on the Santi Aldama front, one thing that I was really excited for him this year was the fact that he was going to be a playoff rotation wild card, where if he was doing well and shows that he can hang in the playoffs, cool. You got the ninth man. And if not, he's an easy omission from the playoff rotation, and you can actually play your best 8 guys. Now with Brandon Clarke, Santi Aldama was the 3rd big man in the playoff rotation. And you're a lot more top heavy now going into a postseason. And just with Brandon Clarke, he just allowed you to blend like small ball principles while maintaining your style on the floor, because he's a good rim protector, as you said. I want to say he, along with Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr., where defender or their opponents shoot at least double digits worse with them protecting the rim than expected. And he's also a great offensive rebounder. I saw on the B-ball index, he's in the 88th percentile in putbacks per 75 possessions, even though he doesn't set bone-crushing screens like Steven Adams, because his vertical spacing, like you said, he is one of the best pick-and-roll men in the entire league. And it's just a crushing blow because it's such a chess piece that you're losing. Because
I want to add on that, like what you're saying. Like, I think it is a crushing blow. And because like the way that this Grizzlies roster is specifically constructed, where they have these really obvious faults and they have these flaws and they have this half court offensive deficiency. And we know they overcome that with extra possessions. They overcome that with steals and turnovers and with second chance scoring. Well, Brandon Clarke was like your second best offensive rebounder behind Steven Adams. And then you play this game. Like, it's not always that the events of one specific game perfectly illustrate like the bullet points that we're going for, but like that game perfectly illustrated the bullet points. They had 0 offensive rebounds in the first half. I believe they finished with maybe 2 for the game. They had 2 second chance points. Like, this team is bad in the half court. And now you've eliminated the second chance scoring. You've gotten rid of half your things. Like, what if Steven Adams misses a game in the playoffs? He missed games in the playoffs last year. Like, you're not going to win. Like, you're flat out probably not going to win a playoff series now, because like your depth, it's no longer last year in the playoffs. Hey, Steven Adams, we decided after game 1 against Minnesota, we're not going to play him. We're going to go with Ziaire Williams and Brandon Clarke. Or, hey, Jaren's in foul trouble, we're going with Brandon Clarke. Or, hey, Melton's not making his shots, we're not going to play him in these games against Minnesota. Or Ziaire Williams not making his shots. Whoever it was, there were options. There were options upon options last year. There are no longer options. It's now just like, I mean, there are options, but I don't know if they're good ones. It's like, I guess Santi Aldama's going to play no matter what. Or we're going to be like, Ckarke has to play no matter what. And so, like, now when you look at the bench, it's no longer a strength. And if anything happens to the starting 5, like, you're way worse. And so I do think, I mean, not even just talking about depth. Maybe I'm a fringe opinion holder, but like, I think the Grizzlies ceiling was there with Brandon Clarke. I thought the best 5-man lineup. They closed with it in some playoff games last year when there was no foul trouble. So it felt like, to me, the coaching staff realized our best chance to win in the postseason against a lot of lineups, against a lot of teams, is going to be with Brandon and Jaren in the front court alongside Dillon, Des, and Ja. And that's out now. So like, that best case scenario, which again, they went to when Steven Adams was healthy, they would go to that lineup in fourth quarters. That's gone now. And so now it's just like another blow of like, yes, Desmond Bane's taking a step forward. We don't know what's going on with Ja. Jaren's taking a step forward. But beyond that, this Grizzlies roster, it's been a little bit of a disappointment. And now, like this season, which started off so well, is going, in a very rocky manner.
Yeah, I totally agree on really all those fronts. You talk about. I definitely want to get into the lineup stuff because, I mean, I've always been with you of like the Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Brandon Clarke, Jaren Jackson Jr. lineups. Those are amazing. Like, because again, you can kind of blend your same principles. You have two switchy big men that can also protect the rim. And with half court offense, not only with his putbacks, but with also his lob abilities, where for Ja Morant, Tyus Jones, you run a pick and roll with Brandon Clarke, teams are either going to play the lob and you get a layup or a floater, or if they don't, you have a springy big man to throw it to. And that's a source of half court offense there. But I mean, I'm looking at that 5-man lineup this year. They only played 118 possessions together, and it should have felt like more. They have a net rating of 24.6. Last season in the postseason, they played that lineup together for 87 possessions, net rating of plus 35.6.
Yeah.
And you're not playing any tanking teams with that. You're playing the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors, two playoff teams who won. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they owned the Grizzlies for a lot of that series before those comebacks. And the Golden State Warriors, they went on to win the championship. I mean, you just...
I only know this, Parker, because of this is my own personal obsession. The that 5-man lineup, I want to say, played something like 2 minutes against the Warriors because of Ja got hurt, obviously, and then there was Dillon's suspension. There was a number of issues keeping all the players from being available. So I want to say they only played basically in one game. So that really solid net rating from last year in the postseason was against the Timberwolves primarily. But that's the whole thing. We're like, I just on Grits and Grinds, I keep a running tally where I'm like, we're up to, and now I basically have to retire it where it's like, all right, it played 200 possessions ever. And it's like plus 30 net rating all time in those 200 possessions. And the funny thing was, like, it wasn't even that, like, it was good offensively. It was like a 120 something offensive rating, but it was all about defense. Like they every time their defense was elite. Like they didn't even shoot a good field goal percentage when they were on the court together. So like maybe you could say that's a criticism of it. For me, I'm like, well, the field goal percentage might go up. You're already plus 30. What if you make shots? So no, it's again, all going back to like, I'm super bummed out that Brandon Clarke's not available. And also just like the fact that, like, however I watch basketball games and what, like, the weird way that I watch the Grizzlies has kind of always been like, the starters are all right. Those are the popular players. They're fine. I always find like the kind of the weird novelty guy where I'm like, all right, I'm now excited when this guy checks in. And now I'm like, I guess I'm excited for Santi Aldama, but it's not the same. I'm forcing it. I'm trying to force it. I've lost all my favorite guys off the bench for the Grizzlies. And now, like, when they sub in, it's more like, I hope this goes okay, as opposed to being like really excited and optimistic, like, hey, this is going to get good now.
I was actually thinking about that for you when, after the Brandon Clarke injury, I'm like, in a span of less than 12 months, Keith has lost Kyle Anderson, Anthony Melton, and Brandon Clarke.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, man, I feel bad. So you don't have that guy anymore. You're just going to roll with Santi.
No, I don't. I mean, before the season, I was a big thing like, man, I got to pick a new favorite player. I haven't not had a favorite player on the Grizzlies, like, as far as I can remember. I was like, so I don't even know who my favorite player is on the Grizzlies anymore. Cause like, it's never been a situation where I lost both of them, because Kyle Anderson and Anthony Melton were my two favorite Grizzlies players. And so now they moved on. I'm like, I was kind of between like Desmond Bane or Brandon Clarke. And I'm kind of like, I guess I'll go Brandon Clarke, but it never really latched on. But definitely now, yeah, without having those three guys off the bench, where I'm like, what am I even doing here? Honestly, it makes me less fanatical. Like, maybe I can be a little bit more objective watching the Grizzlies, because it used to be I was so clouded by like, why aren't you doing this, coaching staff? Like, why isn't whoever in? Why isn't Kyle Anderson playing at the 3 with Brandon and Jaren at the 4-5? Why don't we ever try that? I guess now I'm just kind of like, well, this is the team I cover. This season isn't going that fun. Weight of expectations and all the off-court stuff now. I mean, obviously they're going to win some games, and they're still a very good team, but like whatever real like niche like lineup stuff I was super fired up about, we've kind of lost that. And now it's just like, all right, if Desmond Bane and Ja play poorly, probably going to lose. We don't have these extra ways we can crank out victories. Every now and then, sure, someone's going to go off. Luke Kennard's going to have a big game. David Roddy's going to have a big game, like all NBA teams. NBA players are going to play well every now and then, but it's less consistent. And I think it's going to be harder for the Grizzlies as they go forward than it would have been if Brandon were still here, or some of those other guys who I try not to mention that frequently.
Right. And I will say one thing that's also nice with Brandon Clarke is that, you sometimes people look at bench players and they like to pull up like the per 36. Obviously, it's always unrealistic because it's like, okay, not a lot of players are going to play 36 minutes. Hell, Taylor Jenkins doesn't even play Jaren Jackson Jr. 30 minutes.
Right.
But when Brandon Clarke played more minutes, it obviously led to good stuff. I mean, this season, when he played between 20 and 29 minutes, I have that filter because, for one, Basketball Reference makes that easy. And two, I love Brandon Clarke, but he shouldn't be playing 30 minutes a night. He averaged roughly 14 and 7. The Grizzlies had a +5 net rating, and they were at 11 and 6. Last season, when he played between 20 and 29 minutes, they were 23 and 7, and he averaged about 13-7, a little over a block, and a +9 net rating. So again, it's like it kind of goes back to now they're more top heavy. Having more guys that can level up their production when they play more minutes and then not hurt your team, that's good for the postseason. And you lost one of those players, and now you're thrusting more unproven commodities, especially in this stretch run of the season. Because it's not like this happened in January where now you're like, okay, well, let's go try to trade for a hybrid forward to have off the bench to replace Brandon Clarke. Kind of stuck with what you have now.
Right.
Obviously, until the offseason.
You could have even gotten a disabled player exception if it had happened earlier in the year, and then you could have used just 10-day guys or whatever to fill in with extra players. But no, the Grizzlies, they're stuck. I mean, they're flat out stuck, and it's just kind of a bummer all around.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not a CBA expert, but you mentioned the disabled player exception. I've had a couple people in my replies about that. Are they ineligible for that just because it's past the playoff?
Yeah,
roster?
I also am not a CBA expert, but you have to apply for it before now. It's something like, it might be like mid-January or something. I don't know, but I do know it is too late where they cannot do a disabled player exception and given an extra roster spot to work with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, everyone's like, yeah, shouldn't they just go sign someone like Hassan Whiteside or something? I'm like, please no.
Right.
Please no. Okay.
Well, that's the whole, also, everyone's like, why can't we just sign this guy? That's not going to help. It's not going to help. There is some point of they're not going to be any better than playing small ball. They're not going to win you a basketball game. And at this point, it's okay, let's just give Roddy, LaRavia, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Ziaire Williams, just play Ziaire Williams no matter what. At this point, just play those guys. But it definitely, again, it makes the team worse. And,
Yeah. I mean, your disabled player exception is getting Steven Adams back, because when you get Steven Adams back, you can play in 25 minutes, and then Xavier Tillman doesn't have to play 30 minutes anymore.
Right. I mean, if fully healthy, you can talk yourself into, if we're starting Jaren and Steven, and then Santi and Xavier are your backup 4 or 5, you should be fine. And maybe that doesn't even cost you. Maybe you were always going to make it to the second round and lose in the second round. And maybe that backup lineup is good enough. Personally, I think that when fully healthy, the new second unit, which would be Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, somebody, let's say David Roddy or Conchar or, whoever. But if it's Tyus Jones, Kennard, somebody else, and then Santi Aldama and Xavier Tillman, I still really worry that lineup is not good enough, and it's not a plus, and it's not going to get second chance points. It's not going to keep your opponent off the glass. That's going to get destroyed on offensive rebounding for the other team. So it's no longer a strength, and so. Yeah, I know we're all going through it as Grizzlies fans because we don't know what's going on with Ja, and we're worried about Ja, and we don't know what's going to happen there. And obviously you lose these two, the Nuggets and the Clippers games were just heartbreaking, where you total fourth quarter collapses. But and now I'm just wallowing in my sadness over me thinking the Grizzlies definitely got worse by losing Brandon Clarke.
Yeah, it is very upsetting, especially, you had that third quarter, like hell yeah, 51-point third
Oh
quarter.
goodness.
And then,
I would, man, if you would have asked, like, I would have sacrificed that 51-point third quarter, just to have a regular run of the mill loss. Like if we just trailed by 10 the whole game, that's where I'm at emotionally, Parker. I don't know if other people are there. I'm happy Tyus Jones got his 20-point quarter. I'm happy we dropped 51, I guess. But like honestly, to have that joy and then get it all taken away by getting just totally dominated in the fourth quarter, to watch Russell Westbrook post up Luke Kennard, I don't know. That extra pain was not worth it. Late Sunday night, trying to stay up and watch this game, it was so miserable. I think I would have given up the 51 point just to have like a regular. I can put the calluses up over my heart and be like, this is a normal loss. I don't feel emotionally invested. My hope didn't get up. Just give me a loss. Let's get this game over with. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, I would have just traded the 51-point quarter where I'd be like, okay, could I get like 20 of those points and just move them over to the fourth quarter instead? It's like because the law of averages at some point.
We did law of averages. We scored 68 points in the second half. That's awesome. Just the breakdown was 51-17.
Yeah,
which is poor.
All right, let's try to wrap this with on a little less depressing note of sorts. So first off, you are a very, very big lineup data guy. You do a really good job of illustrating these lineup combinations and stuff, and giving the people that may not have access to cleaning the glass what they're missing. And you're always trying to find the right combinations. Obviously, you were very outspoken about the Ja, Bane, Brooks, Clarke, Jackson lineup. First off, I want to ask you before I ask any sort of lineup combinations, what is the breakfast equivalent of lineup data in basketball?
The breakfast equivalent of lineup. I don't know, Parker. You've asked me a tough. What is an analogy for breakfast?
Yeah,
as far as
analogy,
lineup data?
Yeah.
Are we just talking about like recipes? I don't even know.
Okay, so like
lineup I'm data trying to yes and this. I'm going to play along.
Lineup data. Lineup data is to basketball what blank is to breakfast.
That doesn't seem like the hardest question in the world to you.
No?
All right.
Maybe.
All right. But that's really hard to compare. I guess you would pick out your favorite like ingredient combination, like cinnamon and sugar, maybe cinnamon, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clarke. For me, that's my cinnamon and sugar for breakfast. Those things work well together. Maybe eggs and like pepper. I don't know. I'm not even a cook. I just have a breakfast gimmick to my podcasts. I don't hot sauce with cheese. I don't know. I guess it would have to be ingredients. You think of the lineups. I'm a little bit like, I find a lot of stuff entertaining mainly.
Yeah.
I think like I look at it for entertainment value mainly. I do use it to punctuate my personal opinions. I do use it as propaganda when needed to prop up the arguments I want to make. Although I will grant people, you can twist lineup data to basically say whatever you want most of the time. And so I know I post a lot of the stuff. I'll let the listeners know here that it can be very misleading, and be very careful when you see anyone using it. Know that we usually have ulterior motives with what we're sharing.
Yeah, like I would, pack on the Brandon Clarke theme. I would, always be like, yeah, we need Brandon Clarke minutes. Just don't look at us on off, please.
Right. Yeah, the Brandon Clarke on offs were not awesome this year. It's the same as like last year. Kyle Anderson's on offs were pretty bad. And again, that's where you have to be like, well, you have to use context with all these lineup data things. Like, why is so and so's numbers always good? Like that's the mystery around Dillon Brooks, where Dillon Brooks is always incredible. Led the Grizzlies in on-off net rating swing, the last two seasons. Finally, Jaren's overtaken him this season. But you just have to figure it out. Like, what is it? The lineup data just shows you what has occurred, and then you have to figure out who are these guys playing with, who are they playing against, why do the numbers say what they do?
Absolutely. So, one of the questions I told you I wanted to ask you that actually has to do with the Grizzlies and not breakfast is there what would you pick out or try out as a new death lineup to close his season out?
Yeah.
Now that this one is unavailable.
Right. That's part of my depression where I'm still in like I don't know what death lineup is anymore. Like, I guess it's just our starters. Like, we don't have a weird, I don't think there's a secret. I don't think there's a secret answer. Like, one thing I wanted to unlock is I do want to try like Santi Aldama at the 3 more, but a lot of that was prefaced under him playing with Brandon and Jaren. So now that's gone. I don't know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't mind trying Santi Aldama at the 3 alongside Jaren and Steven, but there isn't really like a secret lineup that we have to try. I mean, I guess you can say with no Ja Morant for at least a game and probably more, I think you would definitely say the lineup we want to see is Luke Kennard, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Jaren, and Steven. Before Steven gets back, you put Santi in there. Like, yeah, I'm extremely intrigued by Santi and Jaren as the 4 or 5 with the Kennard, Bane, and Dillon 1 through 3. To me, that's super cool. That sounds super fun. A little bit of ball handling. Like, Desmond Bane's been doing a great job handling the basketball. Kennard can do that some, a little bit, but like, I'm very interested by the non-traditional point guard lineups of Kennard and Bane. It kind of makes up for Bane and Kennard not having the most length and not being the best defenders. Like, the problem with this is again, like the problem with like my lack of enthusiasm for acquiring Luke Kennard is like, if you're playing Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, it's hard to put Luke Kennard out there too, just because of like defense and rebounding issues that you're going to have. And like, if your second unit, or if like Tyus Jones is out there, having Tyus and Desmond and Kennard, like, you're really giving up a lot on the defensive glass. And then if you if like without Brandon Clarke now, well, if we want to play small ball, like put Roddy at the 4 or Dillon at the 4, all of these lineups, it's like they're intriguing and they're fun offensively, but you're going to get murdered on rebounding stuff. So like, I don't know, like do you have one that now that Brandon Clarke's gone, that you're like, this is the new death lineup I'm super excited about seeing?
Yeah, so you threw one out there that I really liked, and one of the first ones that came to mind was that non-traditional of Bane, Kennard, Brooks, Jackson, Adams. The thing that's tough now with the death lineup is what you're supposed to close with, because that's winning time. But now I feel like their death lineup has to just be the perfect stagger against primarily second units. And I think that's where you can kind of get in. I don't even know if it's like a certain lineup, but I just want to see Bane and Kennard with Steven Adams and just I agree. Have those two freed up by his screens. That's kind of what I want to see right now.
His screens and his offensive rebounding, generating those second chance opportunities, the wide open 3-pointers off of missed shots. Yeah, no, that's right. That's going to be a huge part of Steven Adams returning, is getting those open looks. But again, the problem with any Kennard death lineup is like, and I know we're just throwing on the term death lineup, but like Kennard is something that the other team can focus on and be like, we're going to attack that. And that was like one of the great things about like Ja and Bane and Dillon, Jaren and Brandon. There's no specific weak point that you're going to try to exploit. If the Grizzlies switch a lot of stuff, they're going to be fine. You're going to have a lot of good defensive versatility there. In offensive, like all offense, that's very poorly said, all offense lineup, like it's not going to, it's probably not going to be that much of a thing you can depend on constantly, because you're going to get picked apart eventually, and teams are going to isolate the weak link and probably attack that specifically in the playoffs. They're going to go, over and over and over again at your weak point of the defense.
Yeah. And that's also kind of why I'd say with any sort of, but let's just not use death lineup, because it's just not going to be death.
Fun
anymore.
Lineup. I don't know. The Parker, the
fun lineup
City
that gets
Media fun lineup. Yeah.
The fun lineup that gets all of us excited. The thing is, I feel like in any sort of this situation, especially right now without Ja Morant, you have to choose between one of Tyus Jones or Luke Kennard, because you can't have both of them on the floor at the same time, or else you have two targets defensively.
I don't, man. So like, you say that, but there's nothing else. There's literally nothing else.
And that,
like, you have to play him on the I am. Maybe just the novelty of getting to know Luke Kennard, he's the newest Grizzlies player. And so I want to watch him play. I want to see what he does. Like, Luke Kennard and Tyus Jones are going to play a lot together, and you have to play them a lot together, because you don't have other players. Like, you're not going to play LaRavia or Vince Williams or Kenneth Lofton. Like, those are your legitimate proven rotation NBA players. So we're going to play them. Going back to the general Keith's feeling of Grizzly sadness, those are not like elite game-changing players. Yeah, Tyus had the first player since Mookie Blaylock to have whatever it was, 25 points, 12 assists, 5 steals, 5 threes, no turnovers. Like Tyus has these games, but he's up and down. That's why he's not like a full-time awesome kind of starter guy. And, you know, when you talk about the level the Grizzlies are at and the level we want to be, which is competing with the Suns and the Nuggets and the Bucks and the Celtics and the Sixers and the Warriors and the Mavs, like we no longer have like a clear, oh, we're as good as those teams. We're like, oh, I hope we're as good as those teams, but we have fewer options. And like, you can't tell me the lineups we have to play now when there's no Steven Adams, there's no Ja Morant. Like, we're not as good as the opponents a lot of the nights. And that's like, again, this is the disappointment of this point of the season right now, because it looked like a month ago we were, and it looked like, you know, a month ago we're one of the 3 or 4 teams that looks like one of the best teams in the NBA. And coming off of last year, we hoped this season would be that, where we're competing for a title. Like we've raised our expectation level. The bar, it's no longer icing on the cake that we're winning 50 games, which, by the way, we're not on pace to win 50 games anymore. Like it's all like, now that the expectations are raised, surely that takes some of like the easy free flowing joy. Maybe that's some of the stuff that the team's dealing with, that Ja Morant's dealing with. Like, it's now the burden, the anxiety of you being expected to do things. And when you fail to meet those expectations, it's hard. And as fans, it's not as just joyous. And so, you know, maybe we can just rediscover the joy of just beating a team. That's all we want, you know, but I don't know what it is. Maybe some of these lineups will pop. And that's the fun part about watching basketball, where like they'll surprise you. And you're like, hey, we're running people out of the gym now when Roddy and Kennard are playing together, or if it's Roddy, Kennard, you know, Tillman and Aldama, maybe they'll find a little synergy. But so much of it is unknown to me, like unknown to people who watch all these games, because like, I haven't seen these guys play that much. I don't watch college basketball, so I only know what they do at summer league and basically in the league. I don't watch hustle games. I thought this year was going to be the year I started watching Memphis hustle. It has not been, Parker. I've not found the time to dial into John Roser calling hustle games yet. But like, you know, so much of what the Grizzlies roster is now, to me, it's unknown. And so we get to learn about it over the final, whatever it is, 20 games.
Yeah. I will say 2 things. One, I don't want to also come across as someone participating in deep Luke Kennard slander, because I decided that I was going to transfer a lot of my my fight for Brandon Clarke into Luke Kennard, because it's nice to have a guy that you can almost anytime he shoots basketball from 3, it's like, oh yeah, that's going in.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
He's been excellent shooting. And 2, speaking of the hustle, got to take my wife's service dog Lizzie to the hustle game last night. She did great, but you know, the G League, it's all about developing. We're trying to get her in the grindhouse for those big moments. But one last little final thing when it comes, because this is kind of a part where it's like, it's a combination of searching for a little bit more joy watching Grizzlies games. I guess that's also, I mean, mainly, I know in your case, you know, you're looking for more joy watching Grizzlies games, but you're also looking for different combinations for something to pop. Do you think with that final 10th man rotation spot, at least for this next last 6 weeks of the regular season, should they try one more time with Ziaire, Roddy, or LaRavia? Not for something with the postseason, but if they can get some good momentum going forward for next season to solidify one of those guys as a rotation player.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think definitely. I was about to say, what do you have to lose? I guess you have like the 2nd seed to lose, the 3 seed to lose, but it does feel like, all right, there's one more guy out of the rotation who's proven. Like, what's the point of rostering all these guys in a year where you could have competed for a title? Like, what's the point of letting Kyle Anderson and D'Anthony Melton go for developmental guys if you're not going to develop them? I mean, like, why did we let those guys go to play like John Conchar? Like, I like John Conchar. This is the funny thing where, like, again, I like watching the Grizzlies. I love the Grizzlies. I do. Like, I watch every game and I enjoy watching every game. When I talk about my lack of joy, it's like, oh, I thought we were going to be a title contender, and I don't feel like we're a title contender right now. Like, that's my lack of joy. I still love watching every single game, but like, and I love John Conchar, but John Conchar's not going to get you out of the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs. And so we have to find players better than John Conchar. And it's distressing that we have not yet identified guys on the roster who are better than John Conchar. And like, if a playoff series started today, I'm going to go on my Twitter account and be like, hey, John Conchar needs to be in there. because we don't have anyone better than John Conchar. Like if we're talking about winning the game tonight, if the playoffs start today, I'm like, man, John Conchar needs to play 25 minutes because I don't know if I want to ride with Roddy yet. Roddy's been playing great. I'm not taking anything away from Roddy, but like, I think I'm going to trust John Conchar more. The overall like discouragement is like, we don't have anyone better than this guy. So to answer your question, yeah, I would be like, I don't know what to do with Ziaire. I mean, they know more than I do because they're watching the hustle games. They're watching practices. They're talking to him. They know him as a person. I do not. Maybe the idea of like, we just got to play this guy 25 minutes and see if he can work through it one night. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe they're just like, it's not working for him this year for whatever reason. But like, yeah, as a fan, as an outsider, I want to see just like, man, play LaRavia 25 minutes. Like, let's see what happens with these guys, because where I'm at personally, I know what Tyus Jones is. I know what John Conchar is. I don't know what Luke Kennard is as well, but like, I know his ceiling probably isn't where we want something to be. That's another thing where people on Twitter all the time, which is, a terrible representation of people in real life, but people are like, hey, what do you have against Luke Kennard? Literally nothing. I don't know the guy. I barely watched him. My take is like, oh, he's, as far as I know, he's the best. He's the most accurate 3-point shooter in the NBA. And like the scouting report is, he waits for open looks, and like he drilled open looks against the Clippers, but like, there's that give and take. He's a good offensive player, but he takes away stuff on the defensive end. So I'm still watching, trying to figure out what's like. I'm just, again, I don't get overly carried away when we get a guy like, oh, this guy's awesome. He's not awesome. He was given to you. He was given away to you. If he were awesome, he would not have been given away to you. So I'm going to cheer for him and hope for him. But all that very long-winded. Yeah, I would love to see just like unleash Roddy, unleash LaRavia, unleash Ziaire Williams, because like, we're not going to catch the Nuggets. And so maybe you can use this regular season laboratory to find something else that can help you, a spark that helps you. Make the investment now, so when you need Roddy to close a game in the first round of the playoffs, or LaRavia to close a game, or you need Ziaire to break out of his funk, that they're prepared. I mean, I don't know how you develop all three of them. Like, maybe you have to just pick one to be like 20 games left. Let's play 5 straight games with like just giving LaRavia some burn. But like, LaRavia hasn't played in forever. So my general takeaway is, all right, they saw all they wanted to from him this year. We'll try again next year. Yeah. The Ziaire minutes have been so discouraging. Like the few minutes he played against the Clippers were so discouraging. The garbage time he played against the Nuggets, where he came in and airballed 2 layups. And you're just like, well, what do you do with that? Like what are we supposed to do with Ziaire? You get me feeling down again, Parker. I'm excited.
Again,
I'm excited to watch. Bane is incredible. I'm excited to watch Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm excited to watch Dillon Brooks coming off his suspension. I'm excited to watch Steven Adams when he finally returns. This Grizzlies, again, they're top heavy. They're top 5. Their starting lineup is great. And it's great compared to all teams. It's really, really good compared to all teams. And, we'll cross our fingers for health and good luck. And hopefully they can go far.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to just close on a better note, I mean, Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., they've taken leaps where it's like, okay, I'm comfortable with these guys being the second or third best player on a championship team. And Steven Adams, he's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but like seeing Tyus Jones now like pull up for threes without really thinking about it has been awesome. Like I love watching that. But, Keith and I are just 2 people covering and tweeting about the Memphis Grizzlies that are upset that Brandon Clarke is hurt. And that,
we're in pain. That's all we're doing, guys. We're in pain. Because who wouldn't be in pain? You're a monster if you're not in pain right now.
This was very therapeutic, Keith. I appreciate you coming on GBBLive. If you have anything else to say, just let it fly and let the people know where they can find you and all your stuff.
I do not. I guess if you're a Grizzlies fan, listen to Grits and Grinds, my Grizzlies podcast. If you want some general NBA entertainment, listen to Fastbreak Breakfast and follow me on Twitter at Fastbreak Break.
Absolutely. One of the best NBA Twitter accounts to follow. Follow him on Twitter at Fastbreak Break. Follow me on Twitter at Paka_Flocka. And make sure you are checking out all the great work of Bluff City Media at bluffcitymedia.co. and become an insider to get all the best content and access to Memphis Grizzlies, Memphis Tigers, and all things Memphis sports. And with that, we will see you next week.
Got that monkey on my back, man, I gotta shake it off. Ride with the